Okay, so in this video, what I will be showing you is how to create a grid drawing using a source image, and then we will then enlarge. So to begin, what we're going to do is you start with your source image. In this case, it is a picture of Garfield and John. So I'm going to start by lining up my ruler with the edge, the line that's created here. So I'm just going to make sure that I am on the 0. And I'm going to line my ruler right up with that edge. And I'm going to go ahead and do a 1-inch grid. So I'm going to make a mark at the 1, the 2, and the 3. And a lot of times people think, oh, I've measured, I'm done, I'm ready to move on. But really, anytime that you are making a grid, to make sure that it is accurate, you should make sure that you measure twice so that you have 2 reference points. And what I mean by that is you're going to go ahead and line your ruler up again at the bottom, and go ahead and make a mark at the 1, the 2, and the 3. And then I'm going to line those lines up, line those 2 reference points up with my ruler. And I'm actually going to go ahead and use a purple marker so that you can see this just a little bit better than with my normal pencil. So I'm lining that up. That lets me to draw a nice straight line. I continue on to the next one, repeat, and then lastly, here once again. So then now I have my lines, my vertical lines going straight up and down, and they are exactly 1 inch apart. Now I'm going to do the same thing by lining up here on the side of my picture. So I'm going to have my ruler lined up there on the side. I'm going to make a mark at the 1, the 2, and I don't really have to do the 3 in this situation because it's right on the edge, but I'm going to go ahead and make a mark there. So then I'm going to repeat this again right here on this side. So I'm going to say at the 1, the 2, and then lastly the 3. And then once again, I'm going to line up with my 2 reference points. Always remember you need 2. And now I have gridded my source image. So this would be my first block, second block, third, and then lastly 4th. And I usually like to do letters on the sides, so I'll say A, B, and lastly C. So now that I have my source image completed, it's gridded off on a 1-inch grid. To enlarge it, I am going to start on my blank sheet of paper. And I'm going to do a 2-inch grid on this sheet of paper. So I'm going to start by lining up my ruler right on my piece of paper. I'm lining up right with the edge so that my 0 is on the edge. This ruler 0 actually starts on the edge, but you may have one that doesn't. So do make sure that you are lining up where it says 0. So this time I'm going to count by 2s. So I'm going to start at the 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. Well, I know that I'm not going to need all these boxes. I only have a 4x3. So I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, 4. This is going to end up being an extra box. But once again, I'm going to go to the bottom because I measured at the top. So I also have to measure here at the bottom. So I'm making sure to slide my ruler down. Make sure you don't flip it. A lot of people will make the mistake where they flip their ruler when they go to the bottom. If you do that, it will typically it will get, especially like on the end here, if you see, this is not a complete inch. So that will mess me up and I will be off from where I should be. So make sure that you do turn it. You don't turn it, that you actually just slide it down. And I go with the 2, the 4, the 6, the 8, and the 10 once again. And instead of stopping to draw, I can go ahead and stop now and draw my vertical lines. Make sure you do line up with both those points. So then now I have, this is equally 2 inches all the way across. So now I have to measure going the opposite way. Sorry, my Chromebook's kind of touching right there. So once again, I am lining up with the bottom edge of that paper. And I'm going to go ahead and make it the 2, the 4, the 6, and then the 8. Once again, I'm going to do that on the opposite side. I'm just sliding my ruler across, lining up again at the 2, 4, 6, and finally 8. So then at this point, I can go ahead and line up those 2 reference points with my ruler. And draw my straight line. If you notice where it seems like your 2 points aren't lining up, it very well might be that you flipped your ruler or made a mistake. So look back at the video and see that you have followed exactly what I have done so that you didn't get off. So then now I have my gridded sheet of paper, which is twice, the squares are each twice the size they are here. So this is a 1 by, can't see this, but this is a 1 by 1, and then now these squares are 2 by 2s. So that will, in a sense, double my picture as I start to draw. One thing that I think is a good idea is if I look, this is a 4 by 3, so there's 4 across and 3 down. I have way more than that on my paper. So something that I tell people a lot of times to do, so they don't get confused, is they'll just kind of mark this out. I don't need any of these boxes, and I don't need any of these boxes along the bottom. So that way it will keep myself in line where I should be. You can also cut this. Some people like to cut it off of there. Just like this top part, I don't need anything to do with this top part. So if I would want to get rid of those and cut it down, I certainly could. So then the next thing that I'm going to do is, since I have labeled this with 1, 2, 3, 4, and then A, B, C, D down, I'm going to do the same thing up here so that I know which box I'm in as I'm going. So 1, 2, 3, 4 across, and then A, B, C down. So that should help me as I'm starting to draw if I happen to get off of where I was beginning. So then the first thing that I'm going to tell you to do is I can just look at this and I can start with 1A and I can just draw exactly what's in the box. I can go ahead and start sketching that out. And that's fine if you feel like you are capable of doing that without any little other tricks, but I'm going to tell you a couple little techniques that you can use to help you make sure that you get these things in the right places. There's a reason we use a grid, because there's a lot of things here on my paper that can help me draw this more accurately. And so what I mean by that is, if I take a look at my source image, I'm just going to kind of line it up right here so that you can see my big paper and my small paper at the same time. So I'm going to start in box 1A. So if I take a look at John's hair, it's kind of in this lower right-hand corner. So one thing that I can do to help myself is I can say it's really easy for me to judge where the halfway point is on here. So I can make a mark and say that's the halfway in that box. On the same other thing, on this same line on the bottom side, I can do the same. So I can say that's halfway. So then I know that John's hair is in this lower quarter of that box. If I think about this like a coordinate plane, this is on that lower coordinate right here. Another thing I can do is I can go ahead and divide these two portions up and say this is a quarter of the way. So I can make a mark right there at his head and say that's about a quarter of the way down. So then when I start to draw, I can do the same. I can say, okay, this is the halfway point, and this would be the quarter point. Here's the halfway, and then this would be like my quarter. So then I can use basically a grid within a grid to help me as I'm drawing. So when I start to draw John's hair, I know that the hair is going to end up somewhere, this part here, somewhere between a quarter and a half. So not kind of halfway between there is what I would say. So I'm going to go ahead and say his hair is going to end up here. This top part is right there on that quarter line. So when I draw here, when I start to draw that kind of like humped part of his hair, I'm going to use that information and start drawing right there at that point. So that will help me as I'm drawing that. Another thing is that his hair is lined up right with this line. And that will also help me know that I need to line his hair up as I'm drawing it right with this line. So as you see, I'm going to go ahead and draw this bottom part. Coming in like that, right on that edge. I know this little portion here is going to line up right there with that little quarter mark. And then lastly, I'm going to do this little puffy part coming out. This little tuft here. And then connect that up. And now I know that I have that in the correct location. Then I can continue on. I'm going to go ahead and go to down to 1B. You can, of course, continue across and go all the way across A and do all of A, or you can continue like I'm going to do and go down to 1B. So I'm going to go ahead and draw 1B just because it has a little more complex things than 2B. Excuse me, 2A. So once again, I'm going to keep up with this half point. I can make another little dot there. So I can say down here on my source image, if I make a half, John's hand and face kind of line up right with that. So when I start to draw this, one thing I might want to do is, because that's an easy point to see, is go ahead and draw this side of his face right here. And if I go ahead and put a halfway mark here, I can see that his eyes are lined up right on that halfway point. And his face stops there as well, like the side of his face, and then it starts the side of an eye. So what I can do is do that here on my my actual white paper. I can make my little line there. And when I'm drawing John's face, I can come up from this point, and it's pretty much just mostly straight, and it kind of curves just a little bit. And when I get to this part, I know that I'm going to go ahead and start the curve of his eye. When I'm up here, his eye, or the side of his face, should end up right about this line. And that seems really out there. So it needs to curve and go just like that. So then I can continue to draw that circular eye. Now this eye, a lot of people make the mistake where they're like, oh, that looks going to be really big on here. That has to be wrong. But follow your grid. Let your grid help you. Don't let your brain kind of say, oh no, that's too big. That's not right. That's not right. If it matches up on the grid and you do it here, it's going to match up and it's going to look correct in the end. So that being said, I'm going to go ahead and draw this eye right here. And it goes over and touches in there. I know this looks really large, like I said, but once I finish drawing everything else, it will be proportional. Just like that. Like I said, his face kind of goes up there and touches, and he has kind of these little lines underneath his eye. It's kind of being like the eyelid. Just like that. Then I can also, remember my little quarter points, I can say that's a quarter point again. See where I'm marking at the side of his nose? So that's my quarter point. So then I know that side of that face is coming, or excuse me, the nose right here is coming up. And it's going to get almost to the eye and then stop. And then it's going to go down like that to be like the side of that nose. Trying to see what was going on below there. So that kind of goes here. And then it's right on the line, so it kind of goes over to be like part of his mouth there. Now I can come back in here and clean some of these little lines up, like if I feel if they're a little sketchy or not looking right. Another thing that I'm seeing is it looks like I may have got his eye out a little far there. So you can kind of look at your stuff and fix it as you're going if you see things that you maybe have made a mistake on. Maybe this part needs to come down a little bit more, it looks like. But that should be a basic start there. I'm going to go ahead and continue this with this box and finish it up. So I'm going to add his eyes in here. the eyelid, excuse me. Color that little section in. I'm going to go ahead and add his hand over here. So his hand kind of goes to like about this, almost to the top, but not quite. And then it goes all the way down to the line. And then draw that little other part of the hand. It's like a little wrinkle here. And there shows the side of his face. And then I'm just going to continue on and continue drawing the rest of John's arm and so on down into my box. Like I said, make sure that you are taking the time to use these grid lines to help you think about measurements and the placement of objects so that they will match up together.